Welcome to the Unfiltered Friends podcast, where we humanize your favorite creators through their personal stories and then learn something from them. I hope you feel inspired by today's guest, and if you do, share it with someone who needs it. So without further ado, here is Unfiltered Friends. Hello, Unfiltered Friends. So today's episode is going to be really interesting. I will admit, while I was researching it, there's a lot of really uncomfortable things. Beautiful things, but also uncomfortable things, especially if you're not exposed to it when it comes to end of life. So today we have on Julie, who is a hospice nurse and teaches a lot of people about what her job entails, what end of life is like, and answers a lot of very tough questions. So hello, Julie. Thank you for being on.
Hello.
You were suggested by one of my viewers, and then I started looking into it, and I saw that you had DM'd me like a year prior. I apologize for not checking my DMs, because this would have been an interesting conversation for sure.
No problem. I'm glad I'm here. Timing is always right.
What is a hospice nurse?
Well, first off, we are actual nurses. People are always like, can I be a hospice nurse and not be a nurse? Like, or how did you become one? I'm like, you got to go to nursing school.
Okay.
Become a nurse.
You need qualifications.
So, yeah. It's just, I guess a hospice nurse is a nurse that works in end of life care. Yeah. I mean, I could go on and on, but it'd be kind of boring, but that's the general statement.
Give us more detail. What what exactly does that mean?
Like, well, you have to go into what hospice is. So what hospice is a government funded program where people go if they have a diagnosis of less than 6 months to live. They choose to not do treatment, or they've done treatment and it's not working and they're end of life, which is a whole other thing I can go into. I think I hate describing hospice as that, because then people think it's about death, and really to me it's about life. But go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't really have much experience with understanding what it was until my grandma was in the hospital, and she had double pneumonia, and she was on a BiPAP mask, and she had complications from COPD, and she couldn't swallow, and she couldn't talk, and I noticed that having family around really like bolstered her spirits. Like, she wasn't supposed to make it through the weekend, and then family was around, and all of a sudden like the mask came off, and like you really saw her like come to life. And so I decided, once my family left, that because I had the flexibility to stay, I stayed in a little tiny home near the hospital, because I didn't really have a whole lot of money. But I spent the last 2 weeks with her. And what I noticed is just like, every time she would get over one thing, something else would have popped up. And then by the end of it, it was kind of like, what would have got her was she couldn't really move. So she was getting bed sores, and the surgery, she wouldn't have been able to survive it. I'll just tell you this story. So she was on a feeding tube, but her advanced directive said no permanent solution for not being able to consume. And because she couldn't swallow, she couldn't take in food. And I walk into her room and she's not there. And I'm like, where is she? And so they're like, well, she's on a different floor now. She had taken the tube out and refused to let the doctors put it back in. And so essentially she went to the floor because that was going to be it for her. And when I walked into the room, I didn't see her smile that much ever. It was like she had almost like made peace with what was going to happen, and she was happy with that. And then I have a tattoo right here on my chest that says listen. And it's in that moment I was like, do you want to know what the greatest lesson you ever taught me was? And she nodded. I was like, you taught me that when people want advice, really they're just looking for someone to listen. And within 5 minutes she smiled, and within 5 minutes she left.
Oh my God.
It was like, I don't know. Do you see experiences like that quite often, where you see them make peace, they say their goodbyes, and then it's like they release their own energy?
Yes. I mean, I feel like, so this is the thing. People think being a hospice nurse or going to hospice, or, death basically or end of life is this really depressing, sad, awful thing. That is not my experience. My experience, not every experience, someone smiles and then dies, but majority of the time, the people I am meeting, they are so relieved to finally not have to be in hospitals, not have to do this, not have to do that, and to have answers from people like me or any kind of hospice worker who knows a lot about death and dying, who knows a lot about what they can expect, and who isn't afraid to talk about it and isn't afraid to say death, to say dying, to say, are you okay? What questions do you have? Almost every single time I meet someone, because I do a lot of admission work, meaning I'm the first nurse they see when they're going to be admitted onto hospice. The biggest thing I see is relief, and relief that they're home, relief that they're with family, relief that they have someone who's willing to talk to them about what to expect when they're dying and how we can help them, and someone who's not afraid to speak the truth about what's actually happening. And so it's to me, it feels, your experience, of course, there's grief involved there, right? But it's almost magical. Yeah. It's you said this to her, she smiles, and then she lets go. It's damn. It's, to me, that's, yes, of course. And I'm removed from the grief, right, as the hospice nurse. But so all I see is the love and the connection and the support.
It was worse watching her suffer than losing her.
Yeah, I always say, go ahead. Sorry. I always say, death is not the worst thing. That's what I think. No. Death is not the worst thing. Suffering is far worse.
Yeah, she was really struggling at the end. I'm curious why you chose this path. It's not easy. It has to be tough. So what drew you to this particular field?
Well, I was an ICU nurse for many years. So ICU is probably maybe where your grandma was before this. I don't know. So the ICU nurses and doctors are trying to keep people alive. I did that for most of my career. I've been a nurse for 15 years, and most of my career is in the ICU. And being in the ICU made me really passionate about learning how to talk about death and dying, because we do it we don't do it in the hospitals. We don't do a very good job at talking about that or explaining it or having people and patients and their families understand what's actually happening. It's no one's fault. It's just something we're not even thinking about. Yeah. But because of that, I started really getting interested in learning how to talk about death and dying to families and patients, and then really getting interested in hospice work. And so finally one day I just took the plunge and did it. Here I am.
And you talked really openly about your sobriety, and it seemed like it was connected to almost when you first started doing hospice work. Is that correct?
Yeah, when I first started doing hospice work is when I did get sober. I got sober then. I wouldn't say that's why I got sober, but there was it did happen when I started hospice nursing.
Do you feel like, because my sister is also a nurse, and some of the stories she tells me are pretty intense. Do you feel like maybe the alcohol was an aspect of you trying to cope with what you saw on a daily basis?
Yes and no. So in the ICU, as an ICU nurse, I was very unhappy and did not like my job. I'm not a person who likes to hurry. I'm not a very good rusher arounder and hurrying and time makes me incredibly anxious. And ICU nursing is all that. ICU nursing is hurry up and care, and I couldn't do it. So the anxiety of that definitely made me drink more. But I drank because I'm an alcoholic. Which is a whole other podcast. I'm happy to talk about it. I have no problem talking about it. We'll get into that
another time.
It's nothing to do with my nursing. I'm an alcoholic through and through, whether I'm a hospice nurse, any kind of nurse. I just like to, that's a whole nother, and I'm happy to talk about it too, but that's
you're so matter of fact about things. Is that just an aspect of who you are?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the rushing around thing was actually an experience I had when my grandma passed too. Is she had a DNR, so do not resuscitate, for those who don't know. And I'd never watched a loved one pass away, and it was, you have this idea of people rushing around and trying to make her okay, and everyone moved so slowly, and it was so eerie, that end of life situation. It was just like, well, this was her wish. And it was just, so I gave her a kiss and then cried a lot,
Yeah,
you know?
I love your grandma. I love your, the reason why I love that is because she didn't make you make that choice.
No.
Like there, you know, like she made the choice. She had it written everywhere. You didn't have to do anything for it or decide for her or, you know, make those really, really, really hard decisions. That's why I'm like constantly preaching about people having end of life directives. So it can just be. It can just be like death is not an emergency. You know,
No.
we don't have to rush. And if we can live in the uncomfortability of it, because it can be uncomfortable, we can experience something and just not feel the panic around what people think they should be doing, you know, at the end of
It's
life.
hard to make those decisions when because not everyone's on the same page.
I know.
And it all comes from love, but it doesn't manifest that way in the moment sometimes because people are struggling with it. I think a lot of people talk about, I'm assuming you don't fear death at all from experiencing what you do, correct?
Correct. And let me say this real quick, just so you know, I don't fear it, but I'm also human. And so is everybody else. All of us are, I think we're all human. And so like, if I got diagnosed with a terminal illness tomorrow, I will still have all of the human experience, anger, sadness, fear, you know, because it's still unknown. So in general, no, I don't fear death, but I would still experience the human experience of like feeling afraid of the unknown and not wanting to die and all the things.
So what about people who you have so much more experience than most people do when it comes to end of life? If someone's really struggling with the idea of death or it causes fear in them, what kind of guidance would you give this person for them to understand or maybe put their fears at rest a little bit?
So the first thing I do, because this is really normal, just so anyone listening, you know, I always say it's not nothing to fear. Like I'm side note, this is really I'm not trying to plug my book, but I am writing a book and my publishers want me to make it Nothing to Fear as the title. And I'm like, it cannot be nothing to fear. It's normal to fear. Because it's not like, so that's what I tell people on a daily basis. Because people do say they're afraid, or now that they know they have an open communication with someone who's willing to talk about it, they'll say like, I don't want to, I'm afraid. And I always tell them, that's so normal. Like, I feel like the fear increases because we don't want to fear it. Like whatever, you know, what we resist persists. Like, so this like pushing away of like the fear, like don't fear it, don't talk about it, don't, it makes it worse. So I always say it's so normal. Like you're so normal to be afraid. And the whole point of being on hospice is that we can be here when you need us to move you through this process. And if you're even willing to say to me, I'm afraid, you're above most, you're already ahead of the majority of people. The fact that you can even name it and even say it out loud and share that with another person, that's what it's all about. It decreases it right there. And then a lot of times too, they just don't understand and know things. So and I tell them to ask me anything. And a lot of times we do have a lot of answers for people, you know, we don't know exactly how everyone's going to die, obviously, but we do see it enough that I can really, any hospice nurse can really explain what to expect, there's a book called What to Expect When Expecting. And I think there should be a book called What to Expect When Expiring. Because
maybe that's the name of the book.
Maybe that's believe me, I'm pushing for it.
I love
that. We'll see. Yeah. So because everyone always goes, oh, well, you never know. I get it. We don't really know, but we can kind of tell you step by step what's likely to happen, especially with specific diseases. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent now, but It's normal. It's normal if you fear it. And the fact that you can even say it out loud, you're a step ahead. It's amazing.
So what are the most, I mean, you make videos about a very sensitive subject matter on TikTok, which tends to be not the most nuanced app, at least in my experience. What are some of the most common either pushbacks or misconceptions that you get from people when you make a video about a certain subject matter pertaining to end of life?
So a lot of videos I don't always get a lot of hate, right? But there are certain videos I do. So when I say being dehydrated at the end of life, you die better. Oof, people don't like that. And I'll talk about it in a second.
Okay.
And when I talk about morphine, people get really mad about that too, because people think we're killing people with morphine. And unfortunately, there's also a lot of grief and stuff along with death. So people are angry, so being dehydrated at the end of life does help you die better. I mean, it's like clinically proven. It's a fact. I can go on and on and on about it. Like our bodies are built to die, which is miraculous in itself. And that our bodies have built-in mechanisms to help us die biologically. And
why does
the
dehydration
drier
help?
you are at the end of life, the better you feel and the more peaceful you die. Because the body can't handle fluid. So even if we were to put it, even if someone said, which this happens all the time, I don't believe you, you're lying, you're trying to kill my loved one, put in an IV and give them fluid. They quickly see that it doesn't work like that, because the body is no longer doing with the fluid what it should be doing, which is staying intravascular. It's seeping out. And it just causes more pain and suffering. It causes you to go into respiratory distress and have a bunch of issues. So that's one of the videos. People really don't like to hear that, because most people don't know that, including other healthcare workers. When I was an ICU nurse, I didn't know that. I didn't know that you should be dry when you die. No idea.
Why would you know that? It's like
yeah,
not normal
right.
information
So,
to have.
Yeah. So people hate me on that one, and I'll get a lot of pushback, and morphine too, because morphine gets a really bad rap, and people always think that you take a little bit of morphine and you're going to die, or you give a little extra morphine and you killed someone. And it's just not the case. And it's just because, there's a whole opioid epidemic in the country.
Yeah.
And so people think it's really easy to overdose, and it's actually pretty difficult to overdose. I talk about this all the time. If you're using it correctly. I mean, but there have been plenty of people who think they're going, like I've had hospice patients myself, drink morphine thinking they're going to end their life, and they don't. Like you have to have enough in your system to stop your breathing, have a respiratory arrest, it's called. And it's actually really difficult to do, especially if you're not using anything IV, intravenous. So people think all the time morphine's killing my loved one. It's actually, and one, it's clinically proven it's not, but also it's we're not giving enough to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you're professionals. Like my understanding, and I only have this, but my other grandma wasn't there when she passed, but the first one I was, they were talking about hospice, and they were talking about bringing in someone like you. And I thought that was wonderful, but she was also staying in a assisted living place, which kind of takes care of a lot of those things for her. So I decided I was going to stick around to be that advocate for her, because what I noticed was no one cares about that person the way that I care about that person. And sometimes information wouldn't get passed properly, or stuff would happen where, because they're not focused just on my grandma. How important is it for people to be involved with the process if they have the capacity to advocate for their loved one, to make sure that everything goes right?
I think very important, not just in hospice, in all of healthcare.
Yes.
I think in general, no, I don't think anyone in healthcare, and maybe I'm being naive, but I don't think anyone in healthcare is truly being malicious and trying to hurt anyone. I just think they're so overworked. There's so many things going on that it's just, you don't know what you don't know. And that's how it is with patients and families. And it's like, if you're not in the healthcare system and that world all the time, you just don't know so many things. And the people who are giving the health, or giving the care, are in their little healthcare bubble. And it's like, for some reason, it doesn't always compute, like to each other, to the patient versus the healthcare worker, and to the other healthcare workers. We're not all like perfect, right? And there's human mistake. And so I think having, just always advocate for yourself, always ask questions, always make sure, if you have questions, ask. I know your DMs are crazy too. My DMs are crazy with people asking me questions that I'm like, Well, first off, I can't give medical advice. But second off,
Yeah.
ask your healthcare provider. Ask
Yeah.
your healthcare provider. You don't ask a nurse on the internet. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't like it's so. Yes, please advocate and ask. And I don't think you necessarily have to. Sometimes families can almost get in the way if they're too if they're too intrusive. They almost can like get in the way of good care. But ask questions and don't be afraid to speak up if you need to, or stop someone and say, "What are you doing?" Please.
Yeah. Yes. When researching this, you have a lot of videos that you share of the end of someone's life with permission from the people who are just so everyone knows, she has permission to share these. Permission. Can you go through some of those things that you see? So the one that rattled me was the rattle. That I had to like take a break after that, because I don't know what it was. It just hit. What are the things like that you see typically, or not typically, but at the end of life in your experience?
Yes. So number one, I want to talk about that series. So that series of people allowing me to show their loved ones' videos is like so profound to me, because I think I get DM after DM after DM of people being like explaining their loved one's end of life story, and then saying how torturous it was and how they were it was horrific and all these things, right? And what they explained was like the normal death and dying process, and you just don't know. And then if no one's educating you about how it's supposed to look or sound, it's going to seem traumatizing, right? Because you don't understand it.
No.
And this is your loved one who you love, and they look different, they sound different, and no one's doing anything. And, so I'm so happy that people were willing to have me show those videos. And I do get heat for those too. That's a good one. I get heat for showing those too, because people are just not ready, but I just got to do what I got to do. But yeah, so at the end of life, we call it the actively dying phase. It's actually a phase of death that almost anyone on hospice, anyone will go through. And hospice is what I would say, dying a natural death. Even though you're dying from something, you're not doing any interventions to stop it. So you're dying this natural death. So your body's going to go through the natural death and dying process that everybody is built to do. So the actively dying phase looks almost identical to everybody, no matter what you're dying from. And the things that you'll see are someone being unconscious. So not waking up, even with like shaking, they're unconscious. No food and water because they can't swallow. The big things that are scary to people are the changes in breathing, which I'll get to in a second. So changes in breathing, terminal secretions, which is the death rattle, and then changes in skin color. Oh, and eyes and mouth being open. That can be disturbing for people too. Most people will have their eyes and mouth either open or partially open, but not making eye contact. So it scares people because their loved one looks a little funny. The changes in breathing looks different and looks scary because we're not used to seeing it. And it can look like they're actually huffing and puffing, or waiting way too long to breathe, or breathing too rapidly. And really that is a true biological, metabolic, and chemical response to the body shutting down, because we have I don't want to bore everybody, but there's like a chemistry in our body that makes us breathe and work and do the things it's supposed to do. And it'll slowly shut that down. So your body starts adapting to that and breathing differently. It's not bothering your loved one, because I have seen as a healthcare worker what it looks like when someone's being bothered by their breathing. They don't look like dying people look. They look panicked. They're restless. They're clawing at things. You can tell they feel like they can't breathe. Dying people, for the most part, during the actively dying phase, don't look like that when they have this changes in breathing. And that's because everyone goes through it. It's actually like literally a natural part of death and dying. It just looks scary. Yeah. The death rattle, people really hate that one. So it's not coming from people's lungs. No one's drowning on fluid. It is your body. You and me right now are making saliva in our mouth. Anyone listening, body's naturally making saliva in our mouth. We naturally swallow it all day long. Thank you, body, for doing that unconsciously.
Yeah.
Yes, right? At the end of life, it's still creating moisture in your mouth, so you don't have this dry mouth, but your body is not swallowing it. So it can be a little tiny bit of saliva, but because your mouth's open, because your body fully relaxes. So it takes so many muscles to like keep your mouth shut, keep your eyes closed. All of that stuff is relaxing. So your mouth's open. And now you have this little bit of saliva in your mouth, or a bit. It depends on the person. And every breath sounds really wet. And people really hate it because it sounds like a rattle. And for the most part, it's totally fine in the sense of like, it's not hurting the person. Nothing's happening. Nothing bad's going to happen. We don't want to suction it out, because the more you suction it out, the more the body will produce it. So we either just explain this to the family and let it be, or we can turn the person and have the saliva come out, or there is medication we can use to like dry it up. But there's give and take with that, because then they have a dry mouth, which is also uncomfortable. So it just depends. But it sounds so much worse than it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The swallowing thing was that was what my grandma went through at the end. That's what happened at the end. The respiratory nurse came in to try to see if she would swallow. Then we walked out into the hallway, and then we walked back in, and she was gone. I think she was just kind of like done trying. You know, she had been in that assisted living place for like 6 years, which is a really long time apparently. So she gave as much as she could, and I was thankful to have those like last moments with her. I got to learn that I sang Julio Iglesias to her. Thankfully, I speak Spanish. I learned that she loves professional wrestling, and I promised her that we would put Taco Bell in her feeding tube if she got better. And she just kind of smiled. And I learned so much about her.
Yes.
Grandma loved Taco Bell. I had no idea.
Too. That's so amazing. Oh, I'm glad you had that special time with her. People, no one will ever regret taking the time to do that. People ask me all the time when I'm admitting their loved one onto hospice, they'll be like, so when should we have friends and family come in? I'm like, now, like, don't wait. Yeah. There's never a way, like, just come in and see everybody. Like, don't wait. There's no waiting. Just come and visit if you can. I know it's not possible for everybody, but.
How often do you see the same experience that I had when family came around? It almost seemed like they were starting to get better. Like they told me she wasn't going to take the BiPAP mask off. They told me like she had a couple of days, and then it almost like the family healed her in some way, or it seemed like it. How often do you see that?
I see all different types of things. So I've seen people can really perk up. Well, even if a nurse comes around, like I'll go in to see the person, and because I'm there, they're kind of like putting on a so they can kind of perk up. But family can do numbers for family can really help patients just feel more alive, and I've just seen it all. I've seen them perk up and look like they're doing well, but also make them really tired because they're interacting, right? So then after a few hours, they have to they get a really good sleep because they have just been actually interacting with people, which is always really nice. I mean, connection in general is what life's all about. So it's like that for life. It's like that in death. Connection is what I think everyone needs. It's a whole nother podcast too. I don't know.
Look, we could do round two. I'm always fascinated with this stuff because I like to talk about things that a lot of people are afraid to touch on. So that's I was really happy that you agreed to do this. What I want to know about, like, you've seen so many people pass. Have any of them stuck with you? Is there one that like really touched you in a particular way that you could share?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, so many. So freaking many, and all of it. So I do have one. Okay. So I have one like wild experience where I had a shared death experience with someone, which I didn't know it was called that until someone told me that's what I experienced. And then I'll get to other ones too, because they don't have to be this profound for me to like remember someone. Yeah. But it was one of my favorite patients, died many years ago, but we all got really close to him. He was younger. He didn't have many family. He didn't have much family. So we were like, he was really existential. So he like loved talking about like life and death and all these things prior to him actually dying. And the day he died, I was his nurse, and I went to go, we had a continuous care nurse in the home with him. And I, as the case manager, just went in to like check on everything. And I could tell he was going to die that day just by how he looked. He was fully unconscious. I could just tell he was going to die for sure that day. So I told the nurse, like, make sure you text me when he dies. And I said my goodbyes like in my head to him. And then I went to my car, and I wasn't sad because him and I had been, one, I don't think that's the worst thing. And two, I was just more thinking of him in my car, like, God, I hope you have like a great journey, like whatever that journey is. Like, I just am so grateful I got to meet you, yada, yada. And then suddenly in my head, I heard his voice, and I could feel, like, I just suddenly felt like a burst of like, well, anyway, first off, I heard his voice, and he was going, "Oh my gosh, Julie," and saying my name, which was fucking weird. "Oh my gosh, Julie. Oh my gosh, Julie." And like the feeling he was giving me was like exuberance and like joy and peace and freedom and like soaring, kind of like flying. Like, and he was not saying much except for, "Oh my gosh, Julie. Oh my gosh, Julie." But in like a good, excited way, like basically being like, "I can't believe this." He wasn't saying full sentences, but he was making me feel like, "I can't believe this. If I would have known, if I only would have known." He was saying that. If I only would have known, which I think he meant, if I only would have known how good this is, I wouldn't have worried about it so much. "I can't believe this. I can't believe this." And it was giving me, I was weeping, like instant weeping. I don't know if you've ever had, I'm sure you have just from listening to your videos, but like, we're like, it was like so overwhelming of like peace and joy and love. And to me, it feels like what God would feel like it felt like that, just like, this, and I was like weeping in my car and having this transcendent experience where I was like gone somewhere else for like 30 seconds. And I can only explain this to you now because it's over with. At the time, I didn't know what the hell was happening to me. And he just kept saying, "Oh my gosh, Julie, if I only would have known, if I only would have known, if I only would have known." And then it was like done. And I was in my car crying in a good way, like, holy shit, what the hell was that? And then my phone, like moments later truly, it was like gone. And then she texted me, "So-and-so just died." And I thought, I know. I think he just showed me what happened, which I did not say to her or anybody because I was like, what the hell was that? And I did call my best friend like an hour later being like, "Dude, I don't know what the hell just went on, but like something did." And I haven't said it. I haven't really talked about it for like years and years and years. And I only decided to talk about it on my social media, which I was afraid because I feel like I'm more science-based on my channel, because people kept asking me why I wasn't afraid to die. And that was like one of the huge reasons. I feel like a patient really showed me what it was like, it feels like. And there's many reasons why I'm not afraid, but that's one of the many reasons. So that's a very memorable patient and death, obviously.
I mean, you're a very logical person. How often do you have almost like paranormal type experiences with end of life where you can't logic or science your way through it and you're just like, "Oh, this is just something I don't grasp," or "This is something outside of logic"?
It's funny because I feel like it's all the same. I always feel like that. Like, I feel like I am like straightforward and logical and rational. And I think that includes spirituality and not knowing things. So like always, like to me, like death and birth are like magical things that, oh gosh, how can I even say it? It's like the connection I feel with people, or even by watching someone die and seeing the love, makes me know that there's more than this life, like for sure. And not for sure, like I have to prove it to you for sure, because I don't know. But like, I know there is something else that we don't see that I feel all the time when I'm around dying people and seeing the connection with their loved ones and seeing the love. And I'm like, oh, this is it. This is what life's all about. It's all about love and connection. And I believe, and even when I see people being born too, I feel the same way. It's like this feeling of like, to me, which now I'm getting on a different tangent, but people who are dying and people who are being born, to me, are going to a place and have come from a place that I once knew. And I'll know again. And I'll know again. I know. It makes me want to cry now. And because I know that I feel homesick for a place that I once knew. and people who are
Wow.
dying are going there, and people who are born are leaving there. And I don't know why I know that, but that's what I feel like I know.
Well, you're exposed to it. A lot of people want to avoid on a
Yeah.
daily basis. So, like, your perspective is much more educated, essentially. Like, you're there for that moment. How do you, like, obviously you say, I went to the car, I cried. Like, you have emotional connection to these things. How do you take care of yourself? How do you, like, I'm assuming you take it home sometimes because you're not a robot. So what do
Yeah.
you do for yourself so that you are okay and that you can kind of reset before you do it again?
Yeah. So I will say in general, hospice, because I was in the ICU, that really made me feel like traumatized. And I just so fully believe in hospice. And I so
Mm-hmm.
fully believe that death is not the worst thing. Like that death doesn't necessarily, so like my job doesn't feel that hard, honestly, emotionally, because I just don't feel like it's the worst thing. And I feel like I'm honored to be able to help someone manage their symptoms until they die. And I feel like it's sacred to watch a death. So it doesn't feel super hard for me. So that's one. Two, I have really great boundaries. Not in every aspect of my life, but
Mm-hmm.
in work. I have really, really great work life boundaries. I say no all the time, all the time. I live in California. We have great, I'm unionized, so I'm a union nurse. So like that helps too. You can say no, you can not do things you don't want to do. You don't have to work overtime, things like that. And then three, I'm sober, like you said, like, and I'm pretty open that I'm really active in a 12-step program. And that 12-step program really fuels me and feeds me and helps me with my well-being. And I
Mm-hmm.
have a connection with a higher power that's not religious, but spiritual, that also refuels that. So there's a bunch of things I do, but in general, my work doesn't drain me. My work, other things do. Every once in a while, there's a hard case where I feel like we can't get symptoms under control, or it's just a little more heavy than normal. And those days are just those days. And usually when I come home on those days, I go like right to my room. I watch The Office. I eat a Jersey Mike
Yeah.
sub. I know. I eat a Jersey Mike sub.
Okay.
Oh my God, Jersey Mikes.
I can't. I tried it once. I did not get into it. Can you give me a suggestion or something for an
Yes.
order? What sandwich do you get?
Do you do the typical like original one, like the original
I did
Italian
it.
or whatever it
I
is?
did it one time years ago. I don't remember.
Okay, well, I don't know the name of it, but I think it's like the original or like the basic, the classic one, right? And then just do it Jersey Mike's way. And it's fucking
Okay.
good. Okay, wait, can we
Okay.
swear? I keep dropping the F-bomb.
You have several times. It's fine. Like
Okay.
you're like, hey, I've said fuck like 8 times. Can I say it? I was like, well, you did. So we're already beyond that part.
Oh my God. Sorry, everyone. Nurses
I
have
didn't
potty
realize.
mouths.
I know. Well, you some of my closest friends are nurses, and they deal with what they see with a lot of dark humor, which is why we all get along.
Yes.
I don't know where I got it from. Probably from doing TikTok. But
Like probably from all my trauma. No, I'm just kidding. I don't have no idea.
so how often do people talk about like regrets or things they wish they had done more of when they're in their final moments to you?
So, just to be totally transparent, because I wish I had, like, if I had a bunch of stories of people confessing all these things or talking to me, in general, so in general, it has happened. In passing almost, where people are, I wish I didn't work so much. The classic things you think. I wish I didn't work so much. I wish I
Mm-hmm.
appreciated my health when I had it. Um, I wish I spent more time with family. Those are the big three things. But we are the bystanders, right? I am there to help the family. It's not about me, and they're talking to their loved ones and family, right? It's not always even appropriate for me to be like, so, if someone wants to say it to me, I'm more than happy, and I do listen, and some people do, but most of the time they are happy that I'm there to help them with their symptoms and talk about what's going on symptom wise and how we can help them along the way, and them to be with their family. So like, it's not always happening. Those conversations aren't always happening. And I don't always, and I allow that, because I want them to be with their family. But in general, so my whole point is it's not that people are not always having those conversations with me. But if they do, every once in a while, the three things are, I wish I didn't work that much. I wish I appreciated my health, and I wish I spent more time with family.
Did that shift the way that maybe has it shifted the way that you view the way that you live? So like maybe you live life more fully or in those directions that people express regrets around?
Yes, I do a 10 step every night where I write down, and I'm always grateful for health. I'm always grateful for like being able to walk and eat. And so what hospice has really taught me is about like the love and connection that I see in life, like getting to connect on an emotional level, however it happens with patients is like the most profound thing ever. And then to be able to like kind of be the one standing back and watching the family do that as their loved one takes their last breath or something is the most profound thing. And it's really taught me that life is all about connection and love. And I think it's too simple to say that's the only reason why we're here, but that's what it feels like in the moment. It's the only reason why we're here.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful.
So one of the subject matters that's really sensitive to a lot of people, and people are very divided on it, is the death with dignity idea. Can you explain what death with dignity means?
Yes. So death with dignity or MAID, medical aid in dying, is in the United States, which means you can take medication and end your own life if you meet criteria. So it's in 11 different states. Montana's the 11th, and you have to go through the court system and stuff in Montana. So it's a little more difficult. I can't actually rattle off the other 10 states. I can name some, but not all of them. California is one. I know that.
Colorado, one of them.
Colorado, yes. And I have many videos about it if you guys want to go check them out. But so I'm going to state that it provides it. So I'm all for it because I'm around death all the time. I feel like it should be a federal thing where it should be available to everybody. But it's basically you have to meet criteria, which is less than 6 months to live from a terminal illness, 2 different doctors, and every state's a little different, but these are the basics. 2 different doctors at different times signing off that, yes, you do have 6 months less to live. You are alert and oriented and can take the medication yourself, and you have no severe mental illness like getting in the way of this decision. And they have to do it on different occasions. And some states are like in 2 weeks, some are like 2 months. So it just depends. It can take a while to get this kind of signed off. And then you get the medication, which is usually a powder. And then once you get it, you can take it whenever. So you can take it right away. Some people never take it. Basically, you can take it whenever you want. And really, the healthcare system doesn't have to really be involved. So like a nurse doesn't have to be there. It can just be you and your family. I have witnessed it as a nurse because some families are like, we feel a little weird about this. Can you be here? And it's very peaceful. I mean, I don't know do you want me to describe what it's like? Is that something you're interested in?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Face. Okay. Yeah. So, first off, they usually take anti-nausea medicine so they don't throw everything up because it kind of tastes bad an hour beforehand. And then you mix up the medication. Family does, or they do. I try not to touch it. I don't want to be like involved physically in it. Just, I don't know. I want them to just be able to do it. I think I could mix it up if I wanted or if I had to. And you just mix it up, and it's like a 3 ml liquid. So it's not much, but it is bitter. So you drink it, and within 3 to 7 minutes, you will become unconscious, and not just a little bit, like a lot of it. I've seen people drink it, and like 3 to 7 minutes later, they're basically actively dying. So they're fully unconscious. And then it usually takes about 45 minutes to an hour to die. And it basically just, from what I've witnessed, it kind of speeds up the process. So like the person goes from like talking and saying goodbye to loved ones, friends and family, and then they drink this drink and they go into the actively dying phase within 3 to 7 minutes. And then they actively die for about 45 to an hour, depending. Some people go quicker, some people last longer, it just depends. But it's very peaceful, very, very peaceful, and they die.
Yeah, I mean, and also because I was listening, either it was on your channel or on the news where there was like a lady who went into a hospital and shot her husband because they had a pact. I'm curious your thoughts on that situation.
Oof. That is wildly, I don't know. I mean, I feel for her. Okay, I feel for her. I feel for her. I feel for her husband. But I think it's insane that someone could bring a gun, shoot someone. You're traumatizing the person that's being shot, even if they say, yes, I want to be. You're traumatized because you just shot your loved one. And now everyone around you who witnessed all this is traumatized because they just, it's like horrific and scary and awful and super freaking sad. But I still have a heart for her. I definitely don't think she should be charged with murder, which I haven't really kept up with it. I don't know if she ever was charged with murder or what happened, but
Yeah,
so
I
I
don't know
feel
either.
for her, and I just wish there was a better way, like something called death with dignity that's available in 11 different states in America. All right, if it was available in all the states, this wouldn't have happened, So yeah, I have mixed feelings. I mean, I feel for her, so I'm not like, how dare she at all. But also like, man, that's traumatizing for so many people.
Yeah, it seems like it's like a situation that was like a pact between those two, but then so many other people get to experience it without their
Yes.
consent. And so like, again, like I feel for her and I think it's honorable that she honored this pact, but it also hurt so many other people or traumatized other people in the process.
Yes, exactly.
I also don't think I could do it. So that
I don't
took a
think I
lot
could
of
do it either.
mm-mm,
I don't think
mm-mm.
I could drink the death with dignity medicine. Like I'm all for
No?
it, and I don't know if I could drink it. I always think
Why?
about like the wording, if I want to use the word courage or what word I want to use. But when I've witnessed people do it, it's wild, even as a hospice nurse, to witness. And I'm all about this, right? And it was
Mm-hmm.
still hard for me to, not because I don't believe in it, I totally do, but like it was hard to see this guy who's not at end of life. He's end of life, but he's not, he's still walking around. He's joking with his family, blah, blah, blah. And to know like, damn, you're going to drink this medicine and then you're going to be dead. And all your family knows you're dying and you're dying. I don't know if I could drink it. I don't know. Maybe I could if it was, I think there's specific diseases I could, but in general, I would, and I'm not even afraid of death. So what's that?
Yeah, it was rough with my other grandma. She had dementia when she passed, so
Ooh,
it was also like she was gone way before she was actually gone.
yeah.
But she asked my mom to kill her so many times, and it's like my mom can't do it. She can't. It's also not
No.
legal to do.
Yeah.
But how often do you hear stuff like that? Quite often, where people are
Yes.
like, just kill me. What do you
So
say to that?
here is something wild. So at our agency, I cannot say to them, we have the death with dignity law where you can kill yourself. I cannot say that. But if someone says stuff like that to me, I can tell them that they can if they want to, because so many people don't know it's even available. So I have had several patients that have said stuff like that to me, which is my opening window to offer it, and they take it. There's been at least 2 or 3 that I can think of right now that which makes me feel like helpful and like, oh my God, I aided in their death. I don't know. It's such a weird feeling, that because I'm so for it, but then it also feels a little strange to be the one that's like, here you go. So yeah, people say that to me all the time. And because I'm in California and where I work, we offer that. And some people take it and some people don't. But
Yeah, poor mom. She
I
didn't even have
know.
she didn't have power of attorney though over life. Um, it was like it had to do with my mom had to do with the estate. My aunt had to do with end of life because my grandma knew that my mom wouldn't do it if she asked. So then she started
Oh,
asking. It was just like it was a really like
dementia is so hard.
it is so hard. It's like
So freaking hard.
she became a different person, and I was just
Oh
like,
yeah.
I still love you. You're still this vessel, but like you, and I could see her in moments trying to like break through it, and you just see her just struggle with it. That was probably like one of the hardest parts about it.
I'm sure.
Um,
So hard. And
so
unfortunately, people with dementia don't qualify for death with dignity. Death with dignity.
oh, they don't because they're not
The
cognizant
capacity.
enough.
Yep. And by the time they have 6 months less to live, right? They do at one time have the capacity to say, I don't want to live like this. But by the time they have less than 6 months to live, they don't have the capacity. So they don't meet criteria. Isn't that so awful?
Yeah,
So
that's something that
I think many people with dementia would end their own life. I think if
yeah,
they could before, right? Like before it gets too bad.
as she started to diminish, we actually sat down with a lawyer and like she wrote her advance directive out, which I think was really, really helpful towards the end.
Yeah.
Not that you can give like legal advice, because I know that's not like your expertise, but like, what would you suggest that people look into before it gets to the point of hospice to make that process go more smoothly?
Oh my gosh, such a good question. So Google like advanced directives or 5 wishes. 5 wishes is a little more like in layman's terms, so it's easier to understand what they're asking. But have a clear knowledge of what you'd want your death to look like. And 5 wishes is great because they will give you like real specific examples, like if I'm in a coma and likely to get better, if I'm in a coma and likely not to get better. So there's a bunch of different specific things where you can really, and if it might change as you get older, right? And just know that it might change, but everyone should do it. Me, you, all of us, everyone should have one, and your family should know where that is and what the answers say. Everyone, because it's going to take a load off you and a load off your family. Any kind of estate planning. So unfortunately, I know it's scary and hard and expensive to talk to lawyers, but you really should talk to lawyers about trust, estate planning, anything financial. Even if you don't think you have anything financial, anything, if you're like, I don't have enough money for that. Yes, you do. You should plan who would get your house, like just have it all done so your family doesn't have to. And it can be really messy at the end if you don't. Passwords to your bank accounts, passwords to your phone. Those are the 2 main ones. Password, phone, and bank account are big. What are the passwords there? And give them to somebody trusted. And what you'd like your funeral, burial, cremation, what you'd want that to look like. And I think you should have a celebration of life. I think if you know you're dying from whatever, which not everyone will have that privilege, but if you know you're dying, I think why not have a live funeral where you're alive and there for it? I'm going to do that if I get the chance.
Wait, live? Okay, I'm thinking of something different. What do you mean celebrate? Like, explain what you mean. I don't know what that is now.
Like, well, they call it a celebration of life, but I think they should call it like an alive funeral. Like, because people always have funerals and like say all these amazing things about people when they're already dead. It's like, let's do it when they're alive. So, like, if you know you're dying, have your funeral when you're alive. Have everybody come and celebrate and talk to you.
That feels so morbid. How do you have a funeral while you're still alive?
Well, I think because I'm using the word funeral, that's why it's confusing. So I guess you can just call it a celebration of life. But I think the intention should be, this is because I'm dying. So let's everybody get together and talk to me. I'll talk to you. Tell me all of your, get on that podium with that microphone, say what I meant to you, right? Like, why? So I can hear it and we can hug and love each other and know that everything's been said that needs to be said.
Yeah.
Before.
I mean, I think the moral of that story is tell people how you feel about them while they're still alive, whether they're dying or not, because you don't know. Nobody knows.
No one knows. That's right.
No. Mm-hmm. And we had, for my grandma, we had a 3 months, we didn't have a funeral. She was cremated. And then we 3 months later sat around and told stories to each other.
Yes. That's what I want. That's amazing. I love it.
I want someone to turn me into a firework too, and then like play Katy Perry in the background the whole time.
Yes. Is that a thing? Do people turn people into fireworks? I like it. Yeah, I'm into that.
I mean, I watched this whole TED talk from a death doula, which was a really interesting concept, and the different processes that she had for involving, because I feel like a lot of loved ones, and you tell me, involve themselves to the moment of death and then hand off their loved one to someone they don't know. And so like the death doula thing was really interesting. Can you explain what a death doula is?
Yeah. So in my limited knowledge, even though I live in Los Angeles and I'm sure I know there's a bunch of death doulas. I haven't worked with any, which is so surprising. But just like a birth doula, like a death doula will help you before you die, during your death, after your death. They can be involved in all of that or parts of it. To me, the sad part about being a death doula is that like okay, so like hospices function, the Medicare pays for everything, right? So like as of right now, Medicare doesn't include death doulas in this little package that they get. So if a death doula wants to work with the family has to usually pay out of pocket. It's not like insurance covers it. So I find that sad for the death doula and sad for the family because death doulas are so needed. They're needed everywhere, and they should be employed by companies. They should be employed by hospice companies. And unfortunately, it's just like, it's not. They have to usually get paid out of pocket by the families, but they help immensely with the planning, with the during the death, and then after the death. Just helps you be a little more comfortable, a little more educated, and they kind of hold your hand through it. It's amazing.
Yeah, they were talking about like the families involved with like washing of the body and like stuff like that. It's just like, it seems like post-death, you're involved with the preparation of your loved one for
which is amazing.
The funeral. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And you know what? I'm just realizing it's 10:59.
Yep.
I have to go. Right. Oh my God, I could talk forever.
I know. We'll have to do this again. I will say that I did ask Q&A on Instagram, and a lot of the statements were just like, thank you. Like people who have had experiences with hospice and said that you are an angel. Angel was the word that was commonly used. So if people are inspired by you, want to reach out to you, where's the best way to do that?
Yes. So I am basically on all social media, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram at HospiceNurseJulie. And that's where you can find me. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time. And this is going to be really fascinating to share with people.
Thank you so much for even giving me a voice. I appreciate it.
Of course.
And thank you for all the work you do and all the vulnerability you show. I love it.
Oh, I appreciate that.